Hello, my crafty friends. It's Michelle, the Southern Shell, and I'm going to share with you today how I created these air dry ornaments. I used the air dry clay, I used a couple molds, and I just had a blast doing it. It's super easy. So I pulled out some of my Christmas molds that I had used for resin earlier in my crafting career. I went ahead and dusted them with cornstarch and used the Sculpey air dry modeling clay. Once they're all dusted with the cornstarch, I did tip them out and made sure I didn't have any large clumps in there. And now I'm just going to condition this clay, and you just want to work with it and work with it until it's nice and warm in your hands. It's not cold. Nice and warm in your hands. And then you're just going to go ahead and kind of stretch it out nicely, about the size of your mold. And there you can see me. I'm just pressing it in and making sure that my back is as flat as I want it. And if there's any thinner parts, I'm just going to go ahead and add some more air dry clay to that. And I'm going to press it down flat. As I continue this, I want it to be as flat as I can. And I pull it out and look at that detail. That Mary, Joseph, and Jesus is just beautiful. Now these other smaller pieces here, these have some openings in them. So it was a little more difficult because there were some thinner parts. But just take your time on this. Press your clay in there. And as you're pressing it in, take note of where those empty spaces are. Now my little roller here, my little clay roller, worked wonderful. It helped to press that back flat, and it also showed me where the empty parts were when I was doing the open pieces. This one is the reindeer in the house. Look at how beautiful that back is. When you pull it out, I didn't quite have enough clay around the opening for your ornament holder, but you can just push that back together. I used a little bit of water on my finger and I put it together. I'm using my Waverly chalk paint and plaster. Now, people say to wait an hour before painting your air dry clay. And yes, I should have waited an hour, and I didn't. I went ahead and, I'm such an impatient crafter, I went ahead and put my paint on top of it when it was still wet. And you can see those pieces moving around on me. I would definitely recommend waiting until these are dry at least an hour. The painting on them will help any cracking in the molds as they dry with this air dry clay. And here they are the next day. Look at how beautiful they've turned out. I went ahead and took some 120 grit sandpaper and just went around the back and the edges, making sure there weren't any loose parts from the edge of those molds. Since these are some of my molds from my epoxy days, they don't have that wonderful edge that the IOD molds have on them. So I did have a little bit of overage in there, and I just went in and cleaned it up. Now this is where you're supposed to put your ornament holder, and I opened two of those others, and I had to go ahead and open the two that I left. And it didn't take long. This is very thin, so I just took my Cricut tool and poked it right on through. Now going around the edges of this, because there's some detail there was a little bit of overage. I'm using my fabric tack because you can see on some of these thin areas, they are a little wiggly, and I don't trust that they're going to hold together. Once I sanded them, I took some blow air, my air duster, and made sure they were all clear. Now I'm going in and I'm painting the back of these because I went ahead and put the paint on the front of them when they were still wet. So I'm just going over the back of these, and I'm going to let them dry so we can move on to the next step. Once those backs were nice and dry, I went ahead and flipped them over and put another coat along the front of those, making sure that all of those crevices were hit nicely. Because I painted the first coat when they were still wet, I wasn't pressing real hard into those crevices, and so I wanted to make sure that everything had a nice coat on here on the front of these, and that they were going to be covered well. I just wanted to make sure that each of those details were good and covered nicely. even around those center areas where I would have to hang that ornament up. The ones that had the openings cut out, they had more detail, and so I did take my time. Now this is sped up, of course, but I did take my time making sure all of those pieces had good coverage inside and outside of those openings within the ornament. Now here I'm taking some clear wax and I'm taking some brown sprinkle by Apple Barrel, and then I'm going to pull in some of the metallic gold by Folk Art, and I'm going to add a drop of each of those into my clear wax. I'm going to give it a good mix, and then I'm going to run it all over this ornament, front, back, making sure all of those crevices are coated very well, so when I wipe it back you'll still see the darker areas with that wax. So I'm adding it onto the front of this ornament, and I'm making sure that it gets into the crevices of the image that is on there. And so when I wipe it back, when I buff out the wax, that those dark areas will still stay and show up really well. When I finished this and I used a clean rag to buff it back, you can see I'm rotating there using the clean side of my rag to buff it back. It did not highlight those edges as dark as I wanted them to be. So I came in with the paintbrush now, and I just went in to the mold where those crevices really outlined Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. And I filled that in really well with this wax that I created with the dark browns and the gold. And now I can wipe it back and look at the difference that made. Give it a good little wipe, and all of those, the outline of this ornament is simply beautiful. Since I added a second coat on the front, I wanted to make sure that the back was going to match. So I just added a little bit there on the back, wiped it back so that that back side would match that front side, and look at how beautiful that turned out. Now I will add some antique gold rub and buff to this, and you will be able to see just how beautiful that looks at the end of this. Now on this buck here on the front of this ornament, I wanted him to be that golden brown wax. It's going to buff out and give a little bit of a glisten, but it has that gold in there as well. So I'm putting a nice heavy coat on here, making sure I'm touching all the areas that this buck has on the front of this ornament, being very careful that I don't let it touch any of the other sides on this particular ornament. I'm going to take that same clean rag, and I'm going to go over it, and I'm going to wipe it back so that you can buff back the main lifted parts, and that dark wax will stay in the crevices that it's hard to wipe out of. I'm using some primary blue, and I'm just putting about a quarter in the bottom of my paint tray, and some of this green that I'm going to do the same. I didn't use as much green as I did the blue. I'm just going to use some Apple Barrel Black, and I'm putting a drop in each one of those colors. I'm going to come in with some metallic silver this time, and I'm going to pop that right on in, and it's 2 drops in each. I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice stir, and now I have a dark green and a dark blue that I'm going to use on this ornament. I'm going to use that green first, and I'm going to come in under the lines on the trees, because the top of the lines look like snow, and so underneath those lines in the crevices I'm putting the green, because that's where the tree wouldn't be getting snow, is underneath towards the back, and so that's where I decided to put the green. Now I'm trying to be careful here and making sure that I get it in those areas. And then right along the bottom there are some plants that are in front of that little house, and so I wanted to make sure that the bottom of those plants also had some green. Now that blue is going to be our night sky, and so I wanted to make sure it had some blue, but yet you could tell it was a dark night. And so I'm coming in, and I'm coming and going around all of those lifted embellishments on our ornament, right around our buck, round his antlers, giving it that look that he is standing in the front of all of our beautiful pieces that are lifted on this ornament. And I'm going to come in and go all the way around, trying to be as careful as I can. Now, I do shake quite a bit due to some of my medical issues. And so it's really, really hard. And I was going so slow. And that's okay. That's why I've had to speed this up for you. I'm going, I'm doing a decent paint speed here, but I'm not like overdoing it for you. I don't think so anyway. And I'm just coming in and trying to get all of those areas done. And I tried to take it real slow around the images first, and then to go up and around the outside. Here's a little bit more underneath the smoke coming out the chimney. And now you can see the difference between that house and that's night sky. Now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to go around the edges with this dark blue here. And I think it just looks absolutely beautiful so far. But I'm going to come in the bottom half I'm going to do in this dark green. I'm going to come along the bottom of the land down there, and I'm going to put some of that dark green just like we had on those trees, and make sure I have touched up any of those open bushes and open trees that the snow might not have hit as it was falling down. I want to make sure that I'm not painting over any of the snow drifts, because this would be a very hard color to cover with the white that we're going to use later. So I'm just coming in and just making sure that I have a nice coat along all of these edges, and making sure that the whole edge is also painted in that green. So now I need to come in with some white. This is by Apple Barrel. And I'm going to add that white in there, and then I'm going to add some of that silver in there, the same silver I used in the blue and the green. And that's just going to give me a little bit of sparkle in that white paint. This white paint is going to go over all of the remaining pieces at this time. I just want a good coat on there. The smoke, the house, all about it, and all of the snow top trees and the ground and all of those snow top bushes. It does take me a minute to get all this done, but it is the white, and there's not a whole lot left after you've covered everything else. And once I've done the white snow caps, I'm going to come in with a little bit of that blue and just lighten that blue up a little bit. And I'm going to cover my doors and windows in that pretty blue. It's the same blue, but just lightened a little with my white. Once I get that done, I'm going to come in with a little bit more of that white and touch it up. But I also want to come in and mix some of that green in there, and that's what color my house is going to be. I want to cover a light coat in a light green all over this. Now, it's definitely not the bright green anymore because of that black that was added. And so once I added that white, I really love this color that it gave. It's like a sage green. And I'm going to add a little bit more of that dark green in there for the shadows on the side of that house. You can see all around where the buck is and the doors and windows are. I wanted to make sure it had a little darker coloring there for the shadows. Now I'm going to come back in and just touch up anywhere that white paint just did not get, or even that dark green, just any place that needs a little bit more something, you know what I mean. I'm going to come in with a little bit more of that brown and do some shadowing on the top of that house from the roof, because most roofs have that brown color underneath. So if I come in and just add that under there, it should give me enough reflection of a shadow that I'm looking for. I'm going to go ahead and just buff it off one more time, hoping to get just some reflections and that nice glaze on there. Now, on those ornaments that had the cutouts, I went ahead and did the same process that I did with the Mary and Joseph. Look at that gold on them, because I did add that gold, that antique gold rub and buff. antique gold rub and buff on this one as well. Look at that pop on those trees and that buck. It just turned out beautiful. But when you bring it down and you look at Mary and Joseph and Jesus, that rub and buff just looks like that ornament lights up. I just love how it turned out. The adorable little gingerbread man, I did some chalk red, the crimson, and I did the crimson on some little details on each of these ornaments, on Santa's hat, on the candy cane, on the gingerbread man, and the berries on the owl. And then I came back in with some rub and buff and just touched these little babies up, and they turned out wonderful. Okay, so the next thing I did with my air dry clay is I wanted to create some napkin rings. I have some paper towel rolls here, and I'm wrapping them in some plastic wrap, just some cheap plastic wrap from Walmart. I'm getting some around each of those paper towel holders. Now, I didn't use all of them, but I did get them ready. I have my Iron Orchid Designs Christmas tapers, and they are beautiful. I will link in the description below the lady that I got them from. She's only about 45 minutes from my house, and she was super sweet, and we chatted online for quite some time. So once again, with my molds, I'm going to go ahead and dust them with some paper towels, dust them with some cornstarch, and then I'm going to pull out each one of these. Look at that detail, absolutely gorgeous, and it came out so easy. Once again, make sure you're priming your clay, make it nice and warm in your hands, and then lay it out about the same width as your mold that you're doing there, and just slide it into place. You don't want a bunch of extra in there because it makes it harder to clean it up. But these molds are perfect. Now, when you're using a roller, this is my acrylic clay roller, make sure you're rolling from the inside to the outside so that you're not lifting the edge of that clay out of the mold. You've seen that I did that earlier, but roll from the inside to the outside, lifting that and pulling that out. That snowman is gorgeous. How beautiful. Now, I thought I would go ahead and coat the back of these with some Mod Podge, and hopefully that would give it some moisture, but also a little extra stiffness when they're drying, and it wouldn't crack my clay, my air dry clay. I've not used this clay before, and so I wanted to make sure that I was, trying something a little different. Maybe it would work. It's clay. It's okay. So I did have problems pulling it off of the cellophane due to that coat of Mod Podge on the inside and the outside. So here I've got them all on there, and I went ahead and I coated them with the Mod Podge on the outside as well. I did struggle getting them off. Like I said, I had to squeeze the paper towel roll and make it into a much smaller piece in order to get these off of them. I did the same type of treatment on these when they dried the next day as I did on the Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I used that wax with a little bit of brown sprinkle and a little bit of gold glitter. Once they were on there, I buffed it off, and then I used my gold rub and buff and the antique gold rub and buff, and they turned out absolutely beautiful. I'm going to show you some pictures that are coming up here in the end, and I can't wait to show you how they turned out. I feel like I'm talking super fast with you guys today, but I just had so much information to get in, and I didn't want the video to be so long. I do appreciate you taking time today to spend with me, craft with me, and learn along with me. I do appreciate that. And let's take a look at how these napkin rings turned out. I think they turned out really adorable. The detail in these molds just really made me happy. They turned out so pretty. You see the star there and the snowman all wrapped around that little red napkin. The snowflake and the Santa. You can see a little bit of that antique rub and buff on there. But here you can see them on my small little table. Look at that. I think they are the perfect addition to anyone's Christmas decor. Guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with me. I really do appreciate it, and it really makes my day. Let me know if you like these kind of videos by hitting that like button. And if you've not subscribed to my channel, I do hope you will consider doing so now by hitting that subscribe button. You know, I really do appreciate y'all, and it does help my channel out. And as always, stay safe, God bless, and bye for now.